Am I too young to be a foster parent? Foster care age requirements, exceptions, pros and cons, as well as 10 questions that you might want to consider. My husband and I became foster parents about 15 years ago, so that means I was 35 years old. We had purchased our own house, we had had a job, gone to college, and our kids were in private school at the time. But what if you want to be a foster parent even younger? Maybe 30, maybe 25, maybe 20, or even 18 years old. Are you too young? Hi, my name is Jen Avellaneda, and today we are going to look at what it might mean to be a younger foster parent. When I looked at the demographics on my YouTube channel, I found something really interesting. What I saw is a lot of people that were interested in my YouTube videos were not 40, 50, a lot. In fact, a big majority of them were between the ages of 25 and 35. So what does it mean if you wanted to be a younger foster parent? What age is too young? Are you old enough? Do you have to be married? These are some really great questions that I can see that people are asking, especially women that are searching foster care on YouTube. So today we're going to discuss those things. If you find any of this content useful or helpful, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this, as well as like and ring that bell for notifications of our next video. So what age is too young to become a foster parent? Is 20, 19, 18? How young can you be and still get licensed within your state? Well, you might be surprised to find out that in most states, 21 is the youngest age that you can get licensed as a foster parent. There are exceptions, and I'll share those with you here in a moment. In 6 different states, the youngest age to get licensed as a foster parent is actually the age of 18 years old. And in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 is actually the youngest age that you can get licensed as a foster parent. Each state is completely different, so I would really encourage you to contact a state licensed worker to be able to check with your state directly to find out what your state requires as far as a minimum age of getting licensed as a foster parent. And in addition to age requirements, there are some other things that might be required to become a licensed foster parent, which include having your own financial income, which means a steady job or some way to support yourself. It can include adequate housing. It doesn't mean you have to have a huge house with a big white picket fence, but it does mean that you need to have an apartment or somewhere that's stable and secure and safe for your child that would be a potential foster placement. And you also need to prove that you are in good health, and that means physical health as well as mental health. Again, there are some exceptions depending on if you're a relative placement, but it does mean that you are going to be adequate to be able to care for a child that comes into your home, and you are going to be healthy and able to meet the needs of that particular child. So the exception, what is the exception as far as age requirements for foster parents? As I said before, most states you need to be 21 years old to become licensed as a foster parent. However, there are some exceptions, and those include if you are a relative placement. And what that means is if a child comes into care and maybe you are the only living aunt or living relative that the state can find, and you are healthy and capable and financially stable enough to take care of a child, you may potentially apply to do a home study and to be able to get licensed to have that child in your home. Another example would be if you are a biological sibling to kids that potentially would go into foster care. Maybe you're only 18 years old and your state requires someone to be 21 years old to be licensed as a foster parent. However, maybe your parents are addicted, or maybe something happened, or they moved and they abandoned the children that are your siblings. You can apply to get licensed as a foster parent, as a sibling, to be able to take care of those kids, even if you are under the age requirement. So let's talk about the pros and cons of being younger and getting licensed to be a foster parent. If you are younger and you are wanting to become a foster parent, the first pro for you would be that you likely have a lot more energy than a foster parent who is in their 40s or their 50s or even later. These kids come into care a lot of times with just a lot of energy. They have often present with behaviors that may appear to be like ADHD or some other kind of responses to possibly past trauma. And they often need caregivers who have a lot of energy, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, to be able to meet the needs of these kids. The second pro for you, if you are younger and considering becoming a foster parent, would be that these kids that come into care, they're likely going to be able to relate with you a lot more than maybe an older foster parent who's in their 60s. They're going to connect with you. They're going to maybe find common music that they listen to or common things that they enjoy to do. They may be able to be more active and go outdoors and do things with you that they couldn't with an older foster parent. And so in that sense, again, your age would be a benefit to that child, and it would definitely be a pro because that child that comes into foster care would relate to you a lot more than possibly an older foster parent. The third pro for you, if you are considering becoming a foster parent at a young age, would be that possibly you just don't have the distractions that an older couple or an older individual might have. So being younger, maybe you don't have a large mortgage, maybe you don't have college debt, maybe you are not involved in the Elks Club or these big organizations to where you need to split your time between the child and all these adulting activities. Maybe you can just zero in on this child and become effective because you don't have as many distractions. And that is just one more gift of being younger and becoming a foster parent. The fourth gift and pro of being younger and being a foster parent is likely you are able to have a lot more fun. You have not maybe been worn out by life, maybe physically or in other ways, and maybe you just know how to get outdoors and enjoy these kids and hang out and play games and laugh and wrestle and play hide and seek and do all the things that kids enjoy. Younger people can be amazing foster parents just because of your age. It is not a limitation. Foster parents who are younger can enjoy a lot of activities that maybe foster parents who are older cannot. The fifth pro to being younger and being a foster parent is, my guess is likely you are able to be a lot more flexible than an older foster parent. Maybe an older foster parent, they have their own biological kids or grandkids or again, careers or relationships that they're involved in. And so their ability to be flexible can be limited. Their ability to go to court dates or maybe go to a child's function who is at school or meet specific needs of a child can be more limited the older that someone becomes. And so being a younger foster parent really is an asset because I find younger foster parents, and I know this is true of me as well, that when I was younger, I was able to bend and really mold to that child a lot easier because I had the time and the availability to do so. And so flexibility is definitely another pro of being a younger foster parent. So let's talk about maybe a few cons of being younger and being a foster parent. And really the first thing that comes to mind is maybe financial resources. The younger that someone is, maybe they have a career, they have their own business. However, a lot of times maybe they don't. And so there are resources that need to be spent on these children. There's activities and school pictures and haircuts and all the things that are required to be able to meet the needs of a child. And so being younger, that may be a little bit harder, not impossible, but a little bit harder simply because your resources may be a little bit more limited. The second con of being a younger foster parent may be that not only financial resources, but there may be a limit of community and social resources for you. You may have a smaller family size. You may not have as many connections in the community or the school district or because of your own biological kids. And so that may make foster parenting a little bit harder being younger. Again, not impossible because there are so many great resources for foster parents. There are support groups, there's MOPS groups. There are just so many activities. There's church groups that you can be involved in to really build a social network around you to be able to make fostering a little bit easier for you. However, having a more limited or a slimmer community connections, it may make it a little bit harder if you are younger and you don't have those already set up before you start fostering. Now let's jump into 10 questions that maybe you can consider before you go out and get licensed to become a younger foster parent. The first question has to do with adoption. Kids that come into care, a lot of times they end up going to adoption. That is not the primary goal of foster care. The primary goal, of course, is reunification with biological family members. However, there are cases that come up for adoption. And that is just something I would love for you to consider at maybe 18 or 19. If a child that comes into your home at maybe 3, maybe 2 years later at age 5, they are available for adoption. Is that something that you would consider? And if not, if that's not something you were ready to jump into a long-term, a lifelong commitment to this child, I think it's just really wise to be prepared that there is going to be a significant loss in your life. And so adoption, it's something to consider and a question that you might want to ask yourself prior to becoming licensed as a foster parent. The second question that you might want to consider before becoming licensed is biological siblings. Let's say that you are licensed, you become a foster parent to a 1-year-old, and a year later you get a phone call that there's a biological sibling that comes into care. The goal of foster care, especially in my state, which is Washington State, is to keep siblings together. Would potentially those siblings be separated because your capacity to be able to have a sibling of a child that's already in your home, would that be fractured because you maybe don't have the ability to care for 2 children or care for a brand new baby? And so that's just something to consider. What would that look like? Would you just have 1 child that comes into care and keep it with that? Or would you be willing to expand to maybe multiple children if that biological parent has other siblings that come into foster care? The third question to consider if you are thinking about becoming a foster parent is a potential spouse. Maybe you're already married, maybe you're 20 and you are married and you and your spouse are committed and dedicated and determined to become foster parents. And if that's the case, that is awesome. And I just say go for it. However, if you are single, that does not limit your ability to become a foster parent. In fact, that could make you an excellent foster parent because a lot of times these kids just need one-on-one attention. They need one-on-one care. They feel maybe sometimes threatened if there's multiple caregivers, or they may triangulate or, really vie for their position in that household. But if you are a single foster parent, what would that look like in the future? What would that look like, let's say 6 months down the road, and you find someone that you want to date and potentially marry? How would that impact your role as a foster parent? How would that impact maybe the kids that are already in your home? How would that impact your willingness maybe to engage in relationship with somebody else if they were not willing to be a foster parent? And so again, just a future spouse or a future relationship is something to consider if you're even thinking about becoming a foster parent at a young age. The fourth thing to consider if you are young and wanting to become a foster parent is how long have you thought this? Like, how long have you had this call? Is it something that you thought ever since you were little? Is it something that you discovered and you just know that it is what you were made to do? Foster kids need commitment. They need really all-in caregivers, people that are really invested in wanting to commit their lives, the fullness of their lives and their homes and their families to these children. And so I think that's just a question that you might want to ask yourself. How long have you had this call, this vision, this heart for foster care? And is it something that's going to be fleeting and be gone in a month or 2 months? Because getting licensed is a process. And if you are committed and you just know in your heart you're made to be a foster parent, I say go for it. The fifth question that you might want to consider before becoming a foster parent at a young age is, do you have stability in your life? What does that stability look like? Is it financial? Again, you don't have to be rich. You don't have to own your own home. You don't have to be married. But is there a pattern of stability? Are you someone that's been known for really rash decisions? Or are you someone that people know that they can depend on and trust? The sixth question that you might want to ask yourself before becoming licensed is, can you represent a child well? These kids, they require a lot more, again, than housing and clothes and just someone to be there. They require a lot of advocacy. Can you take them to the doctor? Can you represent them? Are you articulate enough to maybe document their needs or what their preferences are to the court or to the social worker? Can you be the voice for these children, or do you feel like you're not equipped to be able to represent them well? The seventh question that you might want to ask yourself before you become a foster parent is, do you have any experience with children? Again, it's not a requirement. It's not necessary. You're not going to fail your home study simply because maybe you've never babysat or never been a nanny. However, it is really important, again, really just to gauge your heart. Are children on your heart? Do people trust you with your children, their children? At 18 years old, what does that look like? To care for a child, maybe long-term, maybe 24 hours, 7 days a week, waking up in the middle of the night, spending your weekends to become a foster parent versus maybe going out every weekend and leaving a child alone at home. What does that look like for you? And just one more time, again, it is not a requirement that you have babysat kids or maybe have nieces and nephews before you become a foster parent. However, it does make foster parenting just a little bit easier. The eighth question that you might want to ask before you become a foster parent is, are you the only one able to take this child? Are you the main influence in this child's life? And one example of that might be if you are a biological sibling, if you are an aunt or a close relative, are you the most likely and the best choice for this child? Maybe you're 24 and you are a teacher and there's a child in your class that needs care. Are you the most likely one to be able to take care of this child versus a stranger or another foster parent? Those are just questions to ask yourself before you get licensed and become a foster parent. The ninth question to ask yourself before getting licensed at a young age is, do you have the time and the commitment to be able to be a foster parent? Again, children take a lot of time, a lot of attention, and these kids, again, a lot of times they come with trauma or special needs of some sort, and they do require a lot of time and a lot of attention. Are you committed? Are you willing to spend as much time needed to be the best foster parent that you could be? Just another question that you might want to ask yourself before you become licensed at a young age. And question number 10, and possibly this is the most important question of all of them, is if you were a foster child, are you the type of person that you would want to go to their house, if that makes any sense? Would you be someone that you would want to be your foster parent? If you were a child and you came into your home, would you be happy? Would you feel like that person could give you what they need? Maybe flip it and imagine being a child. And if the answer is yes, I encourage you, get licensed and become a foster parent. And in conclusion, I just wanted to add that these 10 questions are not meant to really filter out and discourage you from fostering. I want to encourage you to say yes and to keep asking questions, keep reading books, maybe go to a training or an orientation to see if you are suited or you're willing or really wanting to become a foster parent. There's so many great resources that you can connect to in your community. I know that I put out a video about some books that you can read. I'll try to link that here as well for you to be able to really engage and connect with what foster parenting really is. And these are my final thoughts. We can go down the list all day. We can itemize and pinpoint and maybe evaluate our answers or what we think would be a good foster parent. But at the end of the day, we only know our own hearts. I don't know your heart. I don't know your call. I don't know your passions or your desires or your wants, but you do. And so I encourage you to really evaluate your own heart, your own mind, your motives about why you want to become a foster parent. And I hope that the answer is that you are motivated by love, that you're motivated by compassion for these kids. And whether you are 18 or 19 or 21 or whatever age you are, that you would know that that is what is leading the way, this call and something deeper. And if you feel called or inspired to be a foster parent, I encourage you to say yes. Continue, watch the rest of the videos below. There's such a good selection, especially for new foster parents or potential foster parents. There's videos about getting licensed, and I encourage you to watch them and maybe leave a comment below and tell me your thoughts about where you're at in the process of potentially being a young licensed foster parent. Thank you so much for watching. Again, remember to subscribe below. Go out, live bold, be brave, and we will see you next time.